you so much for having me, Sue, and I'm very happy to be here. So just to reiterate, hello everyone, my name is Arzo Riaz. I am the pharmacist and currently the PGY1 community-based pharmacy resident here at the Valley Hospital. Now, I understand that when we go to the pharmacy, you see aisles of medications, you see aisles of medications with different brands, different generics. There's so many to choose from, and you probably get confused or probably wonder which one is best for me, or what is the difference between all of these. So today, we're just going to focus on addressing this and helping you better understand prescription generics. So we will begin. And if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to address them at the end of the presentation. So an outline of what we're going to talk about today. So first, I'm going to define the difference between brand and generic and kind of go over the similarities between these two types of medications as well. Next, we will talk about how to choose the right medication for you. And lastly, we will go over and address any questions you might have. Now we will play a little game I like to call myths or facts. Here I have 3 statements for you that may be true or false. So the first being generic medications are not as safe as brand name medications. The second, generic medications can have different inactive ingredients. And finally, brand name medications are made in high quality manufacturing facilities and generics are often made in substandard facilities. These are some statements that you may have heard from your friends or family members. So please just keep these in mind and we will go over the answers at the end of the presentation and find out which of these are true and which are false. Now you visit your doctor and they write you a prescription for a brand name medication, let's say Zoloft or whatever it may be. You take the prescription to the pharmacist to have it filled and they tell you there's a generic version of the medication available. Now, which one should you choose? In many cases, the generic may be the better choice for you, but not necessarily 100% of the time. And we will go over why that is. So first and foremost, what is a brand name medication? Brand name drugs must demonstrate their safety and efficacy through expensive and time-consuming trials, which they undergo research and many development programs. They're supplied by one drug company and they're sold under the company's trademark name. After the medication is approved, the brand drug is often awarded a patent and other protections. A patent gives the drug company the sole right to sell their medication while the patent is still in effect. So this patent protection period gives the brand drug company time to recover the costs of their research and the discovering and development of the drug. When the patents on a brand name medication approaches its expiration date, then drug companies that want to manufacture a generic medication, they can then apply to the FDA to sell a generic version of that medication. So before that time period, the brand name medication kind of holds the market. Generics, on the other hand, may be supplied by more than one company and are sold under the active ingredients name. They are made to work the exact same way as brand name medications. They have the same active ingredient and are the same as brand name medications when it comes to the strength, the safety, the dosage form. So whether it's a tablet or capsule or an inhaler, for example, they have the same quality. They have the same route of administration. So taken by mouth, taken under the tongue, taken under the skin subcutaneously. And they have the exact same intended use. So they're used to treat the exact same disease state or to prevent the exact same disease state. So overall, generic medications are equivalent to brand name medications when it comes to quality, efficacy, and safety. So what else do generic medications have to do to be approved by the FDA? The drug company must show that the generic medication is bioequivalent to the brand name medication. So this means that they have to have the exact same active ingredient and they have to show that it works in the same way in the same amount of time in the body. So differences in inactive ingredients are allowed. However, generic medication companies have to submit evidence to the FDA that all the ingredients they use in their medication is safe and that the FDA also has to review all this data as well. The company must also fully document the medication's chemistry, their manufacturing steps, and quality control measures by detailing each step of their process. They must show that their generic medication maintains stability as mentioned on their label before it can be sold, and continue to monitor the medication's stability. Now, most medications, as you know, break down or deteriorate over time. Brand name and generic medication companies must do months-long stability tests to show that their version lasts for a reasonable amount of time. And this is seen in both brand and generic medications. The drug company must also comply with federal regulations for current good manufacturing practices and give full descriptions of the facilities that they use to manufacture, process, test, package, and label their medications. And lastly, inspection at the proposed manufacturing site ensures that the manufacturing firm can manufacture the product consistently and that the manufacturer will produce the same result every single time. So both brand and generic medications are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and they must meet the same FDA standards for quality. Now, to reiterate some of the similarities, if the medication is being reformulated, both brand and generic medications must present data to the FDA to show that it is bioequivalent, and this is both seen in brand and generic medications. They must also adhere to good manufacturing practices, as mentioned before, prior to being sold in the market. All of their ingredients are reviewed by the FDA before it is sold in the market, regardless of whether it's active or inactive. It's always reviewed by the FDA. Even the medication's label is reviewed before it is sold in the market. And if any serious reaction occur, even after their clinical trials, they must always be reported to the FDA. The manufacturing plants also have to undergo inspections, and the FDA will always continuously monitor the medication's quality prior to and after their approval for both brand and generic medications. So as you'll notice, in many cases, the name of the generic medication will be the same as the active ingredient. So here we have an example of one of the most common medications you might see in a pharmacy. We have Tylenol, which is the brand name medication. And as you can see here listed right below, the name of the brand is the active ingredient of the medication. And that is acetaminophen, which, as you would know it, is the generic of this medication. So the law requires drug manufacturers to list active and inactive ingredients of a drug on its label. So if you look at the back, you will see a drug label and it'll include a list of its ingredients. While drugs have the same brand names, the generic name describes the active ingredient. Now remember, as we mentioned before, generic medications are the same when it comes to strength. So here we see both of these are extra strength tablets. So both of these are 500 milligrams each. They have the same safety, they have the same dosage form. So as you can see here, both of these are tablets. They have the same quality, they have the same route of administration. So both of these are taken by mouth or orally, and they both have the same intended use. So both are pain relievers and fever reducers. Now here we have another example. Now let's go over our similarities again. So as you can see, Ventolin HFA, this is an inhaler. And as you can see listed right below it is the active ingredient, albuterol sulfate, which is the name of our generic medication. So they have the same strength, they have the same safety profile, they have the same dosage form, they are both inhalers, they have the same quality, they have the same route of administration or how you take it. Both are taken by mouth or by inhalation. And they have the same intended use. So both are used for shortness of breath or asthma. Now let's do this again. So you might see this commonly over the counter. This is Prilosec. The active ingredient here is listed right below it. So it's going to be omeprazole, and that is the name of our generic. They have the same strength, so both are 20 milligram tablets. They have the same dosage form. Again, both are tablets. They have the same quality, the same route of administration. So they both are taken by mouth or orally, and they have the same intended use. So both are used to treat acid reflux or GERD. Now let's try another one. Here we have Flonase. Can anyone guess what our active ingredient is. That's going to be listed right here under the name of the brand. So it's going to be fluticasone, and that's the name of our brand, and the name of our active ingredient. And they have the same strength, the same safety, the same dosage form. So they're both nasal sprays. They have the same quality. The route of administration is the same. So they're both sprayed into the nostril, and their intended use is the same. Both are used to treat symptoms for allergies. All right, this might be our last example. So here we have another medication. This is Crestor. And as you can see listed right below it is the active ingredient, which is also the name of our generic. So that is rosuvastatin. They have the same strength. They are both 10 milligram tablets. They have the same dosage form. Again, both are tablets. They have the same quality, the same route of administration or how you take it. Both are taken orally or by mouth. And they have the same intended use. So both are used to treat cholesterol. So now we understand that. You might be asking yourselves, well, then how do I tell them apart? What makes them different? So that's a good question. Brand and generic medications might be different in their shape, their color, how they are packaged, as you already saw from the last previous slides. Their flavors could be different. Their inactive ingredients may be different. And of course, their price is different. These differences often come from the inactive ingredients used, such as dyes, fillers, and preservatives, which helps to determine the size, shape, and color of the medication. Generic medications typically cost about 80 to 85% less than the same brand name medication. Brand and generic medications are not allowed to look the same due to trademark laws in the US. Differences in color, shape, size, packaging, and flavor, however, do not necessarily play a role in the way that the medication works. So while these differences are present, they do not mean that a generic medication is any less effective or works differently than a brand name one. But it does mean that you could potentially save some money simply by switching from brand to generic. Now, if they're exactly the same, why do brand medications cost more than generics? There are a few reasons for this. First, the manufacturer of brand name medications have to conduct tests known as clinical trials to prove that their medication is safe and works the way it's supposed to in the body. These tests are expensive, and manufacturers pass on some of these costs to the patients or consumers. Generic medications tend to cost less than their brand name counterparts because generic companies do not have to repeat animal and clinical studies that were required for their brand name medication counterparts to demonstrate safety and effectiveness. They simply have to demonstrate bioequivalence. So this reduction in their upfront research costs means that although generic medicines have the same effect as their brand name counterparts, they're typically sold at significant discounts, as mentioned before, 80 to 85% less. And interestingly enough, according to the IMS Health Institute, generic medications saved the US healthcare system nearly $2.2 trillion from 2009 to 2019. So just to reiterate, usually for new brand medications, their expenses will include the cost of research, the patent, as we mentioned before, development, marketing, and promotion. But none of these costs are necessarily involved for generic medications. They're cheaper because the cost of the production does not include the cost of their development and marketing. And then second, while a brand name medication is only sold by one manufacturer, as mentioned before, several companies will usually sell the same generic medication. So this leads to competition in the marketplace and hence lower costs for patients or consumers. Usually, as more generic drugs are available in the market and are approved, then the cost of the generic version will drop. Now you might be thinking, are there times when I should choose a brand name medication over a generic medication? A generic drug can sound like the obvious choice when it comes to deciding which version of a medication to take. After all, it is cheaper and does the exact same thing. But there are some cases where you might want to consider staying on a brand name medication or using it over a generic one. So when are these? First, when there's no generic version available. So some medications don't have a generic version available, especially ones that are new to the market. Even if a brand doesn't have a generic, you can always talk to your doctor if you can't afford your medication, and they can recommend programs to help you save or prescribe you a more affordable or alternative medication. sometimes you might notice that you might not do as well on the generic. So very rarely, and I want to emphasize very rarely, that people can respond poorly when they switch from one medication to another or from brand to generic. And this is not to say that generics work less. This is just to say that there are many factors that go into place when a medication is doing its thing or when it's working inside your body. So some people may experience more side effects than others, and this could be simply by how the tablet is made. This could be genetics. This could be a number of reasons. So, and this could not really reflect just generics, but if you notice, if you're not necessarily doing well on one medication for another, brand or generic, we always want to let you know we always want to recommend that you speak with your provider about this so that we can make sure that you are on the best medication that works for you. And lastly, when you're taking a narrow therapeutic index medication. So what does this mean? There are drugs where having even a small change in the dose or the blood concentration of the medication can lead to either a therapeutic failure, so it means it might not work as well in your body, or it can lead to a serious reaction or a side effect. So an example of this medication could be Synthroid or any thyroid medication. These are medications where we want to make sure that you're always monitored. It could also include your blood thinners. We want to make sure that when a doctor prescribes you on the brand name medication, we want to make sure that you stick to the brand name medication. And if the prescriber gives you the generic medication, we want to make sure that you stick to the generic medication. We just want to make sure that you don't switch between the two. And that's because we want to make sure that it's consistent in your body. So that's not to say that one works better than the other. That's just to say that we want to make sure that you're being monitored, because changing it even slightly can really impact how it's working in your body. So if you start off with generic, we want to make sure to keep you on generic. And vice versa. If you started off with brand, if you've been taking Synthroid for many years, we want to make sure that you stick on Synthroid. Now, how do you get your insurance to pay for a brand name medication over a generic? Your insurance company will often prefer that you use a generic over a brand name medication. But what should you do if your doctor recommends that you take a brand name instead? So under some plans, you can choose the brand name medication, but you simply will have to pay more. For example, if you have a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, this is just an example, and you choose the brand name medication over generic, you will likely have to pay the copay of the generic plus the difference, the cost difference between the generic and the brand. And this always differs with every single insurance company plan. So I highly recommend calling your insurance company and finding out what their costs are. In other cases, you might have to go through a step therapy before your insurance company will cover the brand name medication. So what is step therapy? Before some plans cover certain medications or brand name medications, they want to check that other more affordable medications don't work out for you first. So in other words, you will usually need to try less expensive alternatives before your insurance will cover the brand name. If you still try these other medications and your insurance company still denies coverage, you can always ask your doctor to help you file an appeal or see if your doctor can prescribe an alternative medication that does not require step therapy. And then finally, we can always see if there's a manufacturer copay card for the medication. These cards help people with private insurance save on brand medications. If you don't have insurance, we can find out if the medication has a patient assistance program for you. These programs help people who meet certain requirements to afford medications at a reduced cost. So the majority of pharmacists who work in pharmacies who dispense medications, especially the ones here at Valley, we always make sure that you are getting your medication at the best cost for you. So we're always looking at manufacturer copay cards online and always applying any discount that we can before dispensing any medication here at Valley. Now, if you'd like to find out whether there's a generic version of your medication available, I always recommend talking to your doctor or your pharmacist at your local pharmacy as well. Now let's review our game of myth or fact. So first, generic medications are not as safe as brand name medications. Myth or fact? So this one is false. This is a myth. They also generic medications use the same ingredients, they work the same in the body, and have the same risk-benefit profile. So as we mentioned previously, they also have the same quality, strength, purity, and stability as their brand name counterparts. Next, generic medications can have different inactive ingredients. Myth or fact? So just to reiterate, this one is true. They have the exact same active ingredients, but can differ in their inactive ingredients. And lastly, brand name medications are made in high quality manufacturing facilities, and generics are often made in substandard facilities. Myth or fact? And this is a myth. So substandard facilities are not permitted by the FDA, and both share the same FDA requirements of complying to current good manufacturing practices and manufacturing site inspections. So there's no truth in the myth that generic medications are manufactured in poorer quality facilities or that they are inferior in quality to brand name medications. The FDA applies the same standards for all their manufacturing facilities, and many companies manufacture both brand and generic medications. So just to reiterate, brand and generic medications have the exact same active ingredient. The price is typically seen as more affordable in our generic medications. Insurance coverages typically prefer starting off with generic medications. However, if you prefer brand name medications, you can always have your doctor do a prior authorization, or they'll probably require you to undergo step therapy. Their inactive ingredients of brand and generic medications may differ from brand, but that's not to say that it is less effective. The strength and dose of both of these types of medications are always the same. However, their appearance can be slightly different, and this may be because they have different dyes, different fillers, different preservatives, but that's not to say that it works any differently in your body. These are my references. You can always click on any of these links to learn more. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at any time. And that is all I have for you. What questions do you have for me?
Oh, thank you so much. This was excellent. Very interesting. Very interesting. We hear about this so often. Well, a couple of questions about inactive ingredients. Would you be able to give us an example of what something like that would be?
Yeah, so something that's typically seen are things like gelatin, different like dextrose, different levels of sugar, different kinds of dyes. People sometimes are allergic to some of the inactive ingredients. So I have like patients who are allergic to certain dyes. So I actually used to work at a compounding facility center. So we used to have a lot of patients come in requesting really common medications that you typically see, but we would change the inactive ingredients for them. So because one person may be allergic to one inactive ingredient versus another. So those are some typical examples. And that's the reason why there are differences in the appearance of these medications simply due to these inactive ingredients. I had a patient when I was at the NICU, working at the NICU, who had to monitor their sugar levels. So we had to look at the sugar content of all of the medications that they were on. So this would be something you would see in the inactive ingredients list.
Okay. Somebody is asking do brand name medications have inactive ingredients also, like generics do?
They do, yes. All medications have active and inactive ingredients, and they are both regulated by the FDA. So the FDA does review both of those lists. And for generic medications, though the inactive, so they could have like different levels of one ingredient versus another, the FDA still regulates it and makes sure that it's safe in generic medications. The inactive ingredients don't necessarily affect the way it works in your body. That is what the active ingredient does. The inactive ingredients are, for example, like dyes or something that doesn't affect the therapeutic effect of the medication.
Okay. Somebody is asking about the inactive ingredient again. Do you know what carnauba wax as an inactive ingredient is? It's Carnauba, Carnauba wax. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not heard of that specific ingredient. However, it is common that it can be that there are many inactive ingredients. Those lists could be long. I'm not really familiar with that one. However, I can, if you want to give me their contact information, I can always look into it and email them if they have any questions. Is it something that they saw that was listed in one of their medications?
Perhaps, I don't know. It was a question from the audience. Um, and then I think you went, just a question about, can you mention again why a doctor might recommend the brand name Synthroid
Yeah,
versus the generic?
levothyroxine. Yeah, so I'll go over that again. So medications such as Synthroid, for example, is used for people who have thyroid problems. So if a if a prescriber prescribes them with Synthroid versus levothyroxine, it does not matter which one they begin with. They both help treat the disease state. However, if a patient has been on one for a long period of time, we don't want to recommend the patient switching from one to another. So whenever you go to a pharmacy, the pharmacist always checks this, and the pharmacist is well aware which medications are considered narrow therapeutic index medications versus those that are not. And they always ensure that you are on the correct medication and that the correct one is being dispensed to you. Typically, when you're at the pharmacy, whenever we get a prescription sent to us, if it's written as brand name medication, by default, most pharmacies will dispense the generic version instead because that's the one that will be covered by the insurance. However, if a Synthroid prescription comes into us, for example, no, the pharmacist won't dispense levothyroxine for you. The pharmacist will know to dispense Synthroid, the brand name, for you instead. And that is because the window or the window for the medication is very narrow. So what that means is that that means that even a small change in the concentration of the medication into your bloodstream can have a large impact on how it affects you, how it affects your body, so how it does its job. So if a small change just changing from Synthroid to levothyroxine could possibly mean a big change in side effects, or it can mean a big change in that it doesn't work as effectively in your body. So this is and this could be vice versa as well. So if a patient started off with levothyroxine first, we don't want to switch them 3 years later to Synthroid. We want to make sure that they stay on levothyroxine. We just want to make sure that they're consistent with what they have, because even a small change in the medication, just the one medication versus another, could impact how it's affecting your body. And we want to make sure that the medication is doing its job and is treating your disease state. So we want to make sure that we're consistent. And for those specific medications, this also includes like blood thinners, for example. These are typically medications that we want to monitor the patients, like lab values. So for Synthroid, for example, patients who are on this, they're typically monitored with their TSH levels. So we want to make sure that those levels stay the same.
Okay, thank you. And then let's see, a question about, do you have any idea of why there has not been a generic for the medication Januvia?
Yeah, so the process for a generic medications versus brand name medications, I'll just kind of briefly go over that. So brand name medications go through a new drug. The drug companies formally ask the FDA to approve a drug to sell in the market, and they do so by submitting an NDA, or a new drug application, versus a generic medication, which would have to file a ANDA, or an abbreviated new drug application. So typically when there's a new drug in the market or a brand name, they hold a patent, and this patent can be good for up to 20 years from the day of filing. So it's possible that Januvia still has the patent. I'm not very familiar why there isn't a generic thus far, but it's possible that they still have their patent, and the patent can go up to 20 years. And then after the expiration of the patent, then other companies will have access and ability to file their ANDA application, and then they can start selling or including generic medications in the market. So that could be one possibility.
So somebody was asking about, how one can learn about where a generic is manufactured.
Yeah.
And somebody had mentioned that there was a New York Times article regarding this issue, some standard manufacturing facilities overseas, lack of FDA oversight. Just would welcome your comments on those two issues.
Could you repeat the question one more time for me?
Well, first of
I'm
all,
sorry.
how can a patient learn where a generic is manufactured, I guess is the first part.
Yeah, so if you go on to well, there's two different areas that I can direct you towards. If you go on the FDA website, they have, if you go on the FDA website, they have a link where you can put in the name of a brand and it'll offer you the list of generic options available for that medication. And this is also can be seen. This is also referred to as the Orange Book, but is also online and it's available for you. And it gives you all the information regarding the generic medications. So it's kind of like a database for brand and generic medications. So it's really easy if you just go on the FDA website and just put in the brand name medication, the list of generics will populate. And then to find out specifically where that should be in there as well. But another area you can look at is the package insert or the product information. So if you go onto the medications website, so any medication, they have all medications have their own website. If you go in on their website, they'll have a link at the top right corner that'll give you more information or a package insert. And usually on the package insert at the bottom of it, it'll tell you the name of the manufacturing company and the location. So they'll tell you where it's located.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess a recent article in a New York Times had mentioned something about overseas manufacturing and some substandard facilities and lack of FDA oversight
Oh,
for generics. So that was the concern.
oh.
Yeah. And then just one more question for bone medications. Somebody's saying that many Medicare Plan D plans don't cover brand names in their formulary list. So I don't know if you know
Mhm.
anything more about this or.
Yeah, so it's possible to yeah, so a lot of insurance companies they prefer including their generic medications on their formulary list versus their brand name counterparts. If there's a specific medication that you would prefer brand, you can always have your doctor do a prior authorization. Or there's a couple of insurance companies have tiers, so they have tier 1, 2, and 3 medications. You can see if your insurance company has tiers. So that means that the higher tier will be more costly, but you can switch to it as an alternative. And again, some insurance companies have step therapy. If you have one medication that you would like to have, if you have a prescription for a brand name medication that your insurance company is not paying for or not covering, you can also have your physician contact them, or you can file an appeal with them.
That's great to know. Thank you so much for that direction. And thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and information. It was
Yeah, of
excellent.
course.
We appreciate